I'm Jami Floyd. This is The Best Defense. Well, first up, of course, the execution of Saddam Hussein. The former Iraqi dictator was hanged just before dawn on Saturday, just 2 months after being found guilty of the murder of 148 Shiites in Dujail, and just 4 days after an Iraqi appeals court upheld his conviction and the sentence. So did the Iraqi legal process work, or was there a rush to execute? And did Saddam Hussein get a fair trial? We have team coverage. Core TV's senior editor, Fred Graham, joins us from Washington, D.C. And Core TV analyst Simone Monasabian joins us, as she always has, here in New York. So, Fred, it seems that Saddam Hussein acted with dignity throughout, and I seem to hear his executioners mocking him. What is the reaction there in Washington, D.C., and is that a proper reading of this videotape, in your view?
Well, I think that's the consensus reaction across the world.
The execution of Saddam Hussein brought much jubilation to Iraq this weekend, but that wasn't the only sentiment felt in the country. Many Iraqi Sunnis also protested the death of their former leader. This is The Best Defense. I'm Jami Floyd. Saddam Hussein was executed for the crimes against humanity he committed during a 1982 massacre which killed nearly 150 Shiites in the town of Dujail. It can be expected that after this weekend's momentous event in Iraq's history, the country will be feeling a ripple effect for years, if not decades to come. Let's take a look, though, Fred, at another bit of reaction from the man we just saw in the CNN package, the ambassador to the UN for Iraq, Ambassador Faisal al-Ishtrabadi, and he's the deputy permanent representative to the United Nations.
I suppose that there is a hardening that takes place for individuals who live that way and who have to convince themselves, in order to live with themselves, that they've done the right thing when in fact they've inflicted misery upon untold millions and destroyed a country.
All right, a fascinating psychological question about Saddam Hussein. And Simone Monasabian, certainly few people in the United States will be feeling terribly sorry for Mr. Hussein today, although feelings are mixed in Iraq itself. Still, the question remains, and this is certainly not to devalue the 148 people who lost their lives in Dujail, but the question remains, what about justice for the tens of thousands of victims of other campaigns like Anfal and the Kurds who resisted Saddam's authority in the 1990s. I could go on. Obviously, you know about these alleged, if you will, crimes better than I do. But it seems that they're not going to get their full measure of justice.
I think that you raise a very good point.
He was once Osama bin Laden's driver, but now Salim Hamdan is a resident of Guantanamo Bay, and he's facing charges of conspiracy and supporting terrorism in the first U.S. military war crimes trial since World War II. This is The Best Defense. I'm Jami Floyd. The trial continues this week at Guantanamo Bay Naval Base in Cuba, with several U.S. military officers already testifying against Hamdan. Joining us now live from Guantanamo Bay is our senior editor, Fred Graham. So, Fred, this is the first military commission in decades. How are prosecutors thus far linking Hamdan to 9/11?
The government is not getting any traction, or very little traction, in its effort to prove conspiracy.
This is very different in many ways, Fred, from a federal trial, from any trial. Even the jury is a bit different. Let's take a look at what the jury is made up of in this case. It's actually the commission that you hear so much about. That's what we commonly think of as the jury. And in this case, they are military officers from all around the world actively serving the U.S. military, and they will vote on both the guilt and the sentence, and a 3/4 vote will be sufficient for a conviction of Mr. Hamdan. Fred, what are the other differences that you're observing in this trial from those that we see every day on Best Defense in civilian courts?
Well, this trial looks a lot like the average criminal trial. There are two crucial differences.
Why start with the driver? Heck, they didn't even prosecute Hitler's driver. Why are they starting with Hamdan?
Well, the problem is that to a large extent, the world is ignoring this trial.
Yeah.
We're here, we're talking about it, but this is our bag. CNN is here. Other than that, there are no American networks doing what we're doing, that is, telling the people from the scene what's going on. And I'm afraid that they aimed a little low in setting up this case, and the point they're going to be making or attempt to make may not be made because the public don't think it's important enough to focus on this.
And I will call them out on that. I think we should be down there. I'm glad you are, Fred Graham. This is what the public has heard thus far, the portion of the complaint that now famously quotes you as saying, in part, this: I can drive a hard bargain if I don't get what I want. I'm not satisfied with it, then I'll take that Senate seat myself. It's a valuable thing. You don't give it for nothing. Did you say this?
Well, I haven't heard the tape, so I can't say whether I did or didn't.
But did you say it? Do you remember saying it? Is it something you would have said or could have said?
In the political process, there's a lot of discussion, bartering, negotiation, leveraging. It's how laws are made. It's how things are done. It's how presidents are elected.
Did you make this statement as alleged in the criminal complaint?
I can't say yes or no without having heard the tapes. And I'm not going to just assume that they say that is necessarily the case until we hear the tapes. Now, I'd like to hear the tapes yesterday in the impeachment trial.
So you acknowledge that you might have said something like this
I'm not going to
in a larger context?
I'll simply say there were a lot of discussions back and forth, a lot of ideas thrown out. Some ideas were good, some were stupid, some were rejected. Questions I asked top staff and lawyers: can we do this? Can we do that? That's the nature of how you govern.
I'm Jami Floyd. We have breaking news here on Court TV. Louis Scooter Libby on trial in a federal courthouse. Now a verdict pending. Let's go out to Court TV's Savannah Guthrie. Savannah, people often think that the crime charged here was the leaking, and it wasn't. Instead, there are 5 counts, none of which have to do with the leaking directly. Indirectly, though, what are those 5 counts?
There are 5 counts. It's 1 count of obstruction of justice, 2 counts of false statements, that is lying to the FBI that was investigating who leaked the name of Valerie Wilson to reporters, and then 2 counts of perjury for lying under oath to the grand jury. So it's 4 separate statements on 4 different dates, 2 of them to the FBI, 2 of them to the grand jury, and then that 1 sort of catch-all charge of obstruction of justice.
Speaking of catch-all, this is our opportunity to catch up with our team coverage providers. They are, of course, Lisa Bloom, Jack Ford, Vinnie Politan. Vinnie, I'm going to come first to you, and the question I have for you is whether we needed to hear from Scooter Libby for him to stand a prayer of a chance come verdict time.
Well, maybe not. I mean, you're talking about 10 days of deliberation, so the defense did something right. They were at least thinking about it.
Jack, let me come to you
Jami,
on that.
we have the verdict.
Okay, come to you, Savannah Guthrie.
Jami, it's a guilty verdict on count 1 of the indictment, which is obstruction of justice, and I'm waiting to hear what the other counts are, but so 1 count of guilty. I'm hearing guilty count 2. That is a count of false statements regarding Tim Russert. Not guilty on count 3. That was what was considered the weakest charge, a false statements charge regarding Matt Cooper. The next count will be a perjury charge. This is a guilty count against Libby for perjury. This concerns a conversation he claimed to have had with Tim Russert of NBC News. The last count is a perjury count, and it's a guilty count. And count 5 was a perjury charge having to do with Libby's conversation with Matt Cooper of Time magazine. So it is clear what has happened here. The jury has convicted of 4 of 5 counts.
Let's turn to our team coverage. Jack, what do you make about the split, not so much as between the Russert charges and the Cooper charges, but within the Cooper charges? You've got an acquittal on false statements related to Cooper, but a conviction on perjury, count 5. And I thought if they were going to split it, it would be all Cooper and all Russert, not split within the Cooper testimony, which, as Savannah reported throughout, is the weakest thing about the prosecution's case, and yet they managed to convict on count 5.
Yeah, that's very puzzling to me also, Jami.
We'll hear from some of these jurors, although federal juries are rather circumspect after they give a verdict. We will make every effort. Our team is out there and on the ground. Let's go out to Fred Graham, who has made his way from that courtroom. Fred, of course, you were inside as the verdict came down. Tell us what happened.
As the defendants, Scooter Libby, filed into the courtroom prior to getting the verdict, his lawyers were very grim. He attempted a weak smile, but there wasn't much enthusiasm behind it. And you can tell that they were realists, and they pretty well knew that this jury had decided on convictions.
All right, there is a press conference. This, of course, is Ted Wells, and to his left, Scooter Libby.
We believe in the American justice system, and we believe in the jury system. That is all we will have to say at this time.
Mr. Libby, are you willing to go to prison to protect Vice President Cheney?
And there you saw Ted Wells talking about his client, expressing his faith in the jury system. No words from Scooter Libby as he stood to the left of Mr. Wells, who defended him valiantly, and yet 4 out of 5 counts guilty. I'm Jami Floyd. This is Core TV. We have breaking news. There will be a verdict in the Enron case read shortly. The jury announced that it reached its verdict, just less than an hour ago, and we expect at noon Eastern time a verdict to be announced to the American public, a long-awaited verdict. Jean Casara's 16 weeks of testimony on both sides of this case, 54 witnesses, and now that jury has to come back and make perhaps one of the most momentous decisions in American legal history. Who are the jurors? What do we know about the jury composition?
What we know is that there are 8 women and 4 men. So this was a predominantly female jury, which is an interesting fact. We were not given privy to their occupations or what they do in life, just the fact that there is a majority of women on that jury.
And one has to hope that they will speak with us and give us a sense of what it is they thought about and what made the difference, however they rule, but not always do juries do that. And let me go out to Savannah Guthrie. Maybe you can help us understand, as sort of our student of Enron, how the prosecution went about making its case as we wait for that verdict to come down.
Well, you know, it's interesting. We should go back to November of 2001 when this story really broke, October, November 2001. And at that time, these prosecutors had to come to terms with this inside of Enron that was so incredibly complicated, as we've been talking about. And this was a process that took months, that took years, and you have to hand it to the government. They had to figure it out for themselves, and it was a forensic accounting mystery.
Forensic accounting, indeed, and it took a tremendous amount of patience and methodology to work this case and to finally bring it before this jury. We expect the verdict to be announced by the jury any minute. We had been told noon Eastern time. Let's toss it back down to the Core TV News Center. Jean Casara is standing by.
We do have breaking news. Ken Lay has been convicted of all 6 charges. Remember, this was a conspiracy trial. We've got 1 conviction so far for Jeffrey Skilling, and now 6 charges, 6 convictions for Ken Lay. 19 of the 28 counts of conspiracy, fraud, and insider trading Jeffrey Skilling was convicted of. He was acquitted of the remaining 9.
Again, the verdict is in that Enron case, and we will have a sentencing against Mr. Skilling and Mr. Lay on September 11th. We're going to continue our coverage. After this, we'll have lots more Core TV live coverage of the Enron verdict. Stay with us.
If you were to have a different result if this case was tried elsewhere,